Well, I don't know about you guys, but I've got a saw blade here, and let's not let it go to waste. Let's make a knife. Pretty much favorite knife that I own. It's my my neck knife that I made. This little guy was made out of an old saw blade, like the next one, and I figured this little guy needed a brother to go with it. This guy is quite sharp as well. I mean, this guy will shave hairs no problem. He'll take hairs off, and it's got a pretty good edge retention also. The one thing I will say about it though is when I learned a lot about heat treating on this one. I hardened it. I got it hardened up to a 62 on a Rockwell. I tested at work, but I didn't temper it properly. So actually, the first time I used it, I broke the tip off. I was trying to do a bow drill set with it. I was shooting a video with it. I broke the tip off of it. I lost my mind and scrapped the video. So I ended up repairing the knife. I made it a little bit shorter. I grinded it down. I filed it down, and I was able to keep the knife usable. And then I removed the handles, rehandled it, and then actually shot the video for this after that. So yeah, so that's that. I'll give you a close-up of this guy too. With this knife, it was also my first attempt at making a sheath. I've never done any leather work before, so I made this guy to hold my neck knife. And here it is. I put on oak handles, brass pins, same brass pins I'm going to put on the other one. But I'm thinking about on the new one, we'll take some 1/4 inch. These are 1/4 inch, and I figure we'll do 1/16 or 1/8 brass pins, and we'll put 2 on the front end of it just to change it up a little bit. But so there's that. It's a good little knife. I absolutely love this thing. It's sharp like crazy, holds an edge real well, and I'm going to try to follow the same recipe with this one as we were going to do with the new one, and hopefully we can make this guy a big brother. So I got a half saw blade here. I've drawn out my template on here. Basically what I've done is I've gone with the Jeff White bush knife shape. I really like the shape of the knife. I really like the, you know, it's very durable. It's thick and strong. The only thing I didn't like was the handle I found was too thin at the front 2 fingers for my hand. So what I did is I went ahead and I made the handle a little bit wider, a little bit chunkier. So at least at this end, it may be a little bit bigger. If you can see here, at this end, it's going to be a little bit bigger and closer to the same size. I may have to bring this down a little bit once we handle it, but it should be pretty good. Now, I'm not sure if I'm going to do 3 dots or 2 dots or put a lanyard loop inside. I have no idea what I'm going to do with this part yet. This is just a design to get an idea of what I think the knife's going to look like. I will go with this shape of a handle though. With the thing, and we're going to use oak like we did on the neck knife. So the tools we'll be using today is a cutting disc, a clamp. We'll obviously be using our saw blade, just a grinder, and we're going to put a cutting disc on it, and a file. So all that together, we'll get this first step here done. So let's start cutting. Alright, so here's our progress so far. Made a little boo-boo and I gave it a little nick there, but that'll be hidden, no problem. I'm still going to bring this in just a tiny bit anyway, so that's okay. The first knife I made, the first one I showed you in the video, I did that one completely with just one of these. From beginning to end, was all file. It took forever. It's you know, it was some kind of a macho thing I heard on a blade forum that, you know, your first knife you should always make with only you should make with a file so you can appreciate the process. Yeah, that's bullshit. It takes way too long. Use a grinder. So here's our blank, very roughed out, but we're gonna keep on going. We're gonna go slap this into the vise, and we'll, you know, we'll rough it all. We'll get all this rough bits off of here, make it nice for the hand. And first, I like to tighten up my vise, and then I like to use just a plain file to start shaping it out. First, try to attack any kind of lumps or high points in the blade. And then once I got that, I'll start rounding the corners. So I'm gonna keep on going on this, and I'll come back a little bit later once it's all done. So here's our blank. We're all cut out. It's looking pretty good, I think. I'll bring it in a little closer. Actually, give you a better look. You'll see the ends nice and rounded, pretty smooth all the way around. Handle fits. We got a decent curve in here. It fits my hand quite nicely already. And once we have our scales put on there, it's going to be pretty nice. So that's our shape. A knife this big, you would normally probably not use steel this thin for, but this is just a practice for me. It still may make a pretty good knife, but I do want to get some more practice in and kind of hone my skills before I start spending money on good steel for knife blanks. Although you can make decent knives out of saw blades, but yeah, anyway, this is practice. I want to hone my skills a little better before I start buying, you know, mosaic pins and all that stuff to make my knives really nice. It'll cost a lot of money to buy those things, and I don't want to have to buy them and mess them up, if you know what I mean. I've got my scale material cut already, and I've got a brass pin. I think we're going to go with 1/8 this time. I also have a 1/4 inch. Here, I'll give you a look at that. I also have a look at a 1/4 inch. This is what I have on my neck knife. But I don't want to go this thick again. I want to try something a little bit different this time. So maybe we can do some kind of pattern or whatever with the smaller pin. But so basically, what we're going to do is I've got my scale material cut. We're going to use oak, same as the other one. I believe it's red oak. But so you want to make sure that it's nice and flat, not twisted, not warped. So when you put them together, they completely block out the light, so there's nothing coming through. I'll give you a look at that in a minute. And we're going to be using a brass pin. And what I like to do is, I like to take my blank, which is what we got here. I drew a kind of a little pale marker line in here, just to show you how I want the handle to look like. So the scales are cut to fit that. So first we're going to do is we're going to mark out where we want our pins. And then we'll drill them, and then we'll drill them through the wood as well, so everything's ready to go. We just have to push everything together. That way everything will remain even and straight, and we'll have no issues with that. once the holes are drilled, then we'll start on the bevel. I was looking for a brass tube to go along with this knife build. I'm going to have to order them online. I can't find them anywhere in any store near me. So I'm going to have to order them online. But anyway, that aside, let's get our holes prepped. Alright guys, so I was having a hard time finding some tubing for the lanyard hole. But I did go to fill up my tires the other day, and I found that my pressure gauge was broken. It wasn't working. So I knocked out the inside, and I believe that the tube is made out of something like brass, similar to brass. It's kind of soft, but I think I might just put that in here, and it fits perfect. So I'll be able to slide that inside the hole here. I don't know if you can see that. But I'm able to knock this in. It's a nice tight fit. It'll make a decent tube through it. Like I said, it's not going to be perfect, but this is just a practice. But it's kind of nice to find, you know, try to find your materials in different spots. So anyway, we're going to go ahead and give that a try. While I was drilling the holes, I did have an issue with one of my drill bits. I guess it got dull and heated up, and it tempered my steel, so now I can't do it. So I'm actually going to go with 3 holes. I'll give you a close-up of that in a second. 3 holes and a lanyard loop. So lanyard hole. So I'll give you a look at that. So we got our 3 holes here. This one hardened, and I destroyed a bunch of drill bits just trying to get through there again. It will not cut anymore. It's tempered, and I really don't feel like annealing the blade to get it out. So we're just going to go with 3. Since then, I discovered what my issue was, and I fixed it. I wasn't able to slow down the drill press bit speed. Normally you just adjust the belts, and you release this thing, and the thing will push backwards, and it gives you some slack on your belt so you can move it. But it was jammed open for some reason. I couldn't get it to close. But I've since fixed that problem. There was some kind of goop inside that held it shut. So anyway, we're gonna go with 3 pins here, and we're going to go with a lanyard loop in the back end. We'll see how it turns out. Hopefully it'll look cool. But anyway, once we're done that, we're going to sand this down a little bit, try to get rid of some of these marks, and you know, kind of tidy it up a little bit, so maybe it'll be a little bit more shiny, a little bit clean looking, and then we'll move on from there. So for now, we're going to get our pins ready that we need, and then we'll drill out the holes for the scales to make sure everything matches and lines up, and then we'll move on from there. One. So we got that in there. First hole is done. We'll drill right through. So I'm going to knock this inside of there to make sure it doesn't go anywhere. Mix everything together. This is a piece of brass tubing, so I knocked this tube inside there. That'll hold it all together, just to keep everything else together while we drill those last few holes to make sure that we don't lose our position. So I'll go ahead and switch up that drill bit, and we'll pop those last few holes and get the scales ready. Alright, so now that my handle is all drilled out, and I'm going to want to mark where I want to put where I want the handle scales to end. So I'm just going to put a little notch in there with my knife, and then back again on the other side. Hopefully my hat's not getting on the way. So let's see. Right about there. There we go. So we got that marked out. I'm going to go ahead and take everything apart and leave that for now. And we'll start sanding up and polishing that blade before we start doing the bevel. Alright, so I'm going to start off with some 320 grit wet dry sandpaper. Give it a little hit of the lubricant, and then just start sanding. Alright, so I got it for the most part all cleaned up. We're still going to do some, we're going to start taking down the bevel now. So I'm going to go set up the jig that I use for that, and then we'll get to work. So I think this is going to be clean enough for me. I'm not really into the whole real shiny blade thing. I find once I start scuffing it up and beating the crap out of my knife like I normally do, it doesn't stay nice for very long anyway, and I'm not one to be sitting down polishing my utility knives. So we're going to set up that jig and start putting an edge on this bad boy. Alright guys, so this is the jig I use. It's basically just some a T made out of some hardwood flooring that I used. So it was the flattest stuff I could find at the time. I drilled 1-inch holes going up from 1 inch from the end, and then 1 inch spaced out across from the bottom here, and we put in some bolts on either side. And what we'll do is we'll clamp our blade onto it like this, and then we'll attach a file to a rod and we'll pass it through the hole, which is going to help us keep a decent even angle the whole way while we're grinding it down. So I'm going to show you this in action in just a second, but I'm going to go set it up, and I want to scribe a line in the center of my blade so I know basically where to stop and where to finish and whatnot. As a rule of thumb, they say that you want to leave about 1 millimeter of material there, so when you're heat treating or when you're hardening your blade later on, that it doesn't melt. I've tried that, and it takes forever to sharpen after it's been done. So I tend to go down to a point where it's pretty sharp, and while I'm doing my hardening process, I just stay away from the edge, but I bring the heat up there until that really starts to glow, and I find that works good for me anyway. So anyway, I'll show you that in a future video. That'll be in part 3, but for now, let's get that bevel done. I basically have this rod here that I fastened to a file with a hose clamp, and I use my good old friend Gorilla Tape to hold on the back end, and this holds very firm. It doesn't go anywhere. It's on there nice and tight. So I'll basically just slide this in through here, and I can raise and lower this depending on the angle I want. So as I start to go down, if I find that I'm going a bit too steep of an angle, I can just twist that down again and then file back down until I reach the spot where I was at. And you can use that. You judge that by using a a magic marker of some kind or a Sharpie. And when you're ready to do the other side, you simply take this piece and you reverse them, and you flip your knife blade over and you do the other side. I've scribed a tiny little line inside in the center of this. I don't know if you could see it or not, but it is very faint, but I could see it good enough, so I'm just going to go with that. So I'll just line this up, clamp it down, and we'll get to work on my board a little bit, but doesn't seem to affect anything except for make a little bit of noise. So let's just get down to it and see how it looks. As you remove the material, it kind of really starts to take the look of actually a knife edge. So you just want to do a couple of passes, come back, check your center. Do a couple of passes, come back, check your center. If you find that you're getting too close to your center line and you don't have the bevel that you want, go ahead and turn this down a couple more turns, and then start going, and you'll see yourself, and then hit this with a magic marker or a Sharpie, get it all black, and then you'll start to see how your bevel is moving up towards the center of the blade again. So I think I'm going to want it to be a little bit bigger than this, so I'm going to go ahead and turn that down some, and then we'll see how we look. Alright guys, so we got 1.5 done. So I'm going to bring this in a little bit closer, but it's starting to look like something now. Look at this side, it looks like a knife shaped piece of steel, just a blank. But you come over on this side and it's really starting to look like a knife. Just that addition to a bevel on the side there really makes a difference. I'll give you a close-up of what I got going on so far, and then we'll get back to it. Alright, so here's one side. Just plain, nothing special. But when I flip it over, got a nice Scandi grind growing on there. Looking pretty good. It's pretty even all the way around. And you can see, I don't know if you'll be able to see the difference here, but we're coming very close to that center line. So I'm going to start taking down this side, and we may have to flip-flop back and forth after just to finish it off to get it as close as I'd like to get it to. That's kind of the fiddly bit. But, whoops, come on, focus. There we go. So once we, I'm just going to keep on going actually, and when I get to the point where we're at, we'll take a look at it and we'll see how it looks. Alright guys, both sides are done now. So you got this side, I don't know if you can see the little bevel there, and you got this side and the other side. It's pretty even. Take a look at that. Hopefully that'll focus for you. You can see the tip, it's pretty even. On the back side you don't really have to worry about it, but I left a tiny little bit of steel right there that we'll have to just sharpen out later on. And anyway, so I think we're looking pretty good. The next step now will basically just be I'm going to buff it up a little bit, make it look a little more clean. We'll clean it up. We have all of our pins done and ready to go. I have the scales marked off of where I want the the scale to finish up on the handle. We'll probably cut that today, and then after that, heat treat, and then we'll move on to just gluing it all together. Alright, so there's our scales cut. You know, they fit quite nicely tight together, so they should mate with the the blade quite nicely. So you can kind of get an idea of what this is going to look like. Just a kind of a sneak peek, I guess. Alright guys, so I'm going to keep on heating this up. When I'm ready to dunk it, I'm going to check it, make sure it's not magnetic. And once we're ready to dunk it, we'll bring you back so you can see the dip. Okay, we're just about there. Rich, you might want to, Mr. Cameraman, you might want to back up this a little bit. because when I dunk this, it's going to burst into flames. Didn't do it this time. So the blade's all hardened now. There we go. Next step is going to be, we're going to take it home. We're going to degrease it, get as much of the grease off of it as we can, and then we're going to temper it. A little note about tempering. Tempering can be a little bit on the tricky side. You want to make sure that you know what is the optimum method for tempering the steel that you have. In our case, in the case of this knife, in this build, I don't know what kind of steel it is. It is a complete mystery, and with the hardening method, it could be a type of steel that likes to be air quenched. It could be there's so many different ways it could be done, and you never know which one it is if you don't have the identification of the steel you're using. So in our case right now, I'm going to treat it like I would like a 1095 steel. I'm going to oil quench it, what you saw, and then we're going to on my last knife build, I took the knife blade and I tempered it at 400 degrees for an hour, for 1 hour. Turned out that it was a little bit on the still on the brittle side, so I actually took it back. When I ended up breaking the tip off of it, and I ended up preparing the tip, and I threw it back in the oven again for another, I think it was an hour. So I think on this one I'm going to give it, or a half hour. So on this one I'm going to give it, an hour and a half at 400 degrees, and we'll see how it goes. I think it should be okay, so we're going to cross our fingers. And just remember that if you're new to knife building and you really want to have something nice or something you could sell or whatever it is, go out and buy yourself a decent knife blank. And usually when you buy these blanks, they come with the information on how to temper it, or it can be researched because you'll have the identification of the steel. So that being said, guys, I'm going to take this home. We're going to clean it up. We're going to toss it in the oven 400 degrees. I'm not sure if I'm going to show you that, but maybe I will. We'll see. And then we start cleaning her up and then putting the handle on, and then we get to test it. So there's a timer set for an hour and a half and 400 degrees. So we'll check it out in a little bit. Alright guys, so I got it all cleaned up. It was pretty goopy after that mess. I'm still gonna wash it down with some soap to get any residual oils off of here. I left the bevel the way it is. It's all black like that. That'll be removed all through the sharpening process. For the most part, it's pretty straight. The only issue I have is just around here. It very slightly goes to the left. I'm going to gently try to bend that back, but if it doesn't work, I'm just going to leave it. In a past build, I had worked a long time. I was doing my first flat grind on a Mora style design, and I tried to bend it, and the knife broke on me, and I don't want that to happen again. I can live with a very tiny little deviation in the blade. I'll try to see if I can get you to see it. It's really small. I don't know if you can see it. It's just a tiny little bit. I'm still going to work out this little bit. It's really small. I'll gently give it a try and see if I can get it to go back, but I really don't want to snap my blade. I have to start from scratch. That'll just drive me nuts. So anyway, we'll start to work on the handle a little bit, and then see if we can put all this back together. So the part that you're going to be putting on the front of your handle, you're going to want to try to finish that up as nice as possible before you glue it, because it's going to be very difficult to be able to get your sanding materials up close to the edge of the blade before once it's all glued on. So we're going to try to get that as nice as possible. We're looking pretty even with the file so far. I'm just going to take down this bit here a little bit more, maybe come down a little bit more on this side, and then we should be just about ready to stick that on and then finish up the handle. We've got that all cleaned up, nice and smooth. So we could probably start knocking these pins together. All right, so back again. We got the handle basically prepped to be able to glue it on. One thing I just wanted to mention too, one thing I like to do is I like to take some really coarse sandpaper and just kind of rough up the handle where I'm going to be you know, gluing it together. In my mind, it's going to stick better together like that. I could be full of crap, who knows? But to me, it just makes me feel better. So I'm going to go ahead and just rough this up a tiny little bit over where most of the wood's going to make contact to the steel, and hopefully it'll give some extra adhesion and you know, give it a stronger bond. So I'm going to go ahead and do that, and then we're going to put the handle together and glue it. So we're going to be using Gorilla Glue to glue the handles together. It's not your usual epoxy, but I have used Gorilla Glue on all but one of my knives, and it has held up really, really well. So okay, so we got our pins in there, and our lanyard loop. Everything's pushed together, so we're gonna spin it up into this clamp here. All right, guys, so that's it for now. We've got the handles on. Pins are all the way through. We've basically tightened up everything with some clamps. You want your clamps to be pretty firm, but you don't want it to be excessively tight because you don't want to squeeze out all the glue. But I've clamped them down pretty good, so now we just have to wait until tomorrow before we can start shaping the handle some more. So you can see already at the top here. I want to see if I can zoom in on that. The reason why we put the tape is because the Gorilla Glue reacts with water and it starts to foam up and it expands into the wood and really adheres to pretty much everything it's going to touch. So it starts to foam up. Now once this comes up, we'll be able to peel this tape off and that'll come right off with it, with some luck anyway. We'll come back and check this out tomorrow. There's two. So, there we go. We'll have to grind down all the metal bits first, and then we'll start shaping the handle. I'm kind of excited for this. Okay, so I've got a black line here. I've already done the other side, but I just want to show you this. I got this black line here. I want to drop it down, remove this much material so far, and then we'll start going in with the file after and kind of evening everything out. Just a quick note, guys, if you know, when you're doing this at home, it is always a good idea to wear some ear protection, some eye protection, and possibly a mask too, with all the little fragments of glue flying around when you're grinding things down. It's definitely a good idea to you know, to wear some protection, follow some safety procedures, maybe even wear gloves if that angle grinder happens to catch your hand. You'll definitely know. I just tore off a strip of 120 sandpaper, and let's round out those corners. Alright guys, so for the most part, we're finished. I'm going to bring you in close and give you a look at it. Handle is done. I sanded it down pretty nice. It's pretty comfortable. I went from from 120 to 320 to 120, 320, and then 1200. It is a bit of a big jump, but I don't like it to be super... I don't know, I didn't have anything in between. I had some 600 wet dry, but I find it always ends up making my my wood stained a little bit. So I just basically went a quick jump to 1200 just to take off the edge. And once we oil it up, it starts soaking in. It'll really kind of, I don't know, make it grippy. But I'm gonna give you a quick look at what it looks like. All right, guys. So there she is. I'm just gonna hit her up with some oil a little bit later, and that's it pretty much. You can't even tell where the wood and the blade start or finish, the wood and the steel. It's pretty nice. All that's left really much is to sharpen it up, but I'm not going to show you that. I think the next time you see this knife, we're going to be out testing it in the field. So let's just get some mineral oil in this handle. So on all my knives, I use mineral oil. It's food grade. You'd find it in your pharmacy or whatever it is. I use this to condition all my handles. Works quite well. So let's put some on the handle and see how it looks. Make sure you get all the way around and all the little, oops, all the little spots. So typically what I'll do is I'll rub this in all over. I'll let it sit for an hour or so, maybe 2 hours, maybe even overnight, and I'll hit it up with another shot a little bit later, and see if we can get this to clear up a little bit. There we go. So that's our knife, guys. What do you think? All recycled materials except for the pins. The pins I bought. Blade was recycled. Handle was recycled. Tube was a pressure gauge for your tires that I opened up. It was broken. I opened it up and I used it for a lanyard ring. And the pins I bought. So total cost of this knife besides time was $6. Right, so we got it all sharpened up. How's that look, guys? So there we go. Got her sharpened up, put onto a strop. It's looking pretty good, I think. All right, guys. So she's all done. I'd like to hear your thoughts. it's pretty cool. Everything that this whole knife was built from was all salvage materials. Is it as good as what a custom knife builder would make? No, it's not. But you know what? It's my own. Everything out here was, the handles was a leftover piece of board that I had from doing an old fish tank stand. The saw blade was given to me from a friend. That was it was a half saw blade, like you saw in the first installment of this series. The lanyard ring, or the tube that I put inside here, that was just an old pressure gauge that wasn't working for my tires anymore. So I took that and I cut it open and I used that as my lanyard ring. So total cost of this whole knife was $6, not including time for just the pins that I had to buy. And I believe they were like $5.50 or something like that, and with tax and all that, it was like $6.10, something like that. Anyway, so pretty cheap. So I want to encourage you guys to go out and give this a try. It should be fun. I'm not going to show the sharpening process of this. I mean, everyone pretty much knows how to sharpen a Scandi grind. So anyway, the next time we see this knife, we're going to be out in the field and we're going to be testing it, see how she performs. So I want to thank all you guys for sticking around in this 3-part series and watching this build. I really enjoyed been making it. It was a lot of fun. Learned a lot, and I'm not sure if I'm going to make another one sometime soon, but I would like to make another one. It was a lot of fun. So you guys take care. See you again soon, and hopefully next time we'll be out in the woods having some fun, either testing this knife or having some lunch. You guys take care. We'll see you in the next one.